Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjano Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Śaśī Radha Madhava ki, Śaśī Radha Giridhari ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Puri Brajakachaja Shudara Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace by Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Puri Brajakachaja Shudara Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Saranta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. ISKCON Founderacharya, BBT Founderacharya, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Kantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Samaveda Bhakti ki jai. Lord Brahmā, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories, assembled devotees, all glories, assembled devotees, all glories, Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Hare Krishna. There we go. It's the chapter Movements of the Sun. There we go. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, we'll start with text 4. Read a few translations, and there is one purport we'll stop at. So, Idamesha tulayor vartate tadaho ratrani samanani bhavanti yada vrishabadishu panchashu cha rashishu charati tahahani yeva varhante hrashati cha masi keka gatika ratrishu. Did you get that? Okay. Translation. This is all about the sun, the moving of the sun. Yesterday's class, Balaram was speaking as this verse in the Brahma Samhita that the sun is the Raja Samasta. It's the chief of all the planets. Without the sun in the universe, there is no life. And its movement and energy is creating what we see around us. So it's very important. Dedicated a whole chapter to the movements of the sun. So when the sun passes through Aries or Mesha and Tula, Libra, the durations of day and night are equal. When it passes through the five signs headed by Vrishaba, Taurus, the duration of the days increases until Cancer, when it gradually decreases by half an hour each month until day and night again become equal in Libra. So that's the movements of the sun, and you notice, if you look at your phone there, if it has the weather on it, you look at your sunrise and sunset times, how it changes throughout the year. Days become longer during the summer. Then what day do they start getting shorter? Yeah, the beginning of spring, and then it starts getting longer again, like that. So it just shortens and lengthens. That's what's being described here as it's moving through the sky. And I don't know if it's already been, okay, it's coming up, text 6. Text 5, when the sun passes through the 5 signs beginning with Vrikshika, Scorpio, the duration of the days decreases until Capricorn, and then gradually increases month after month until day and night become equal in Aries. And then text 6, it's referring to Dakshināyanam. Until the sun travels to the south, the days grow longer, and until it travels to the north, the nights grow longer. So that's your Dakshināyanam. Dakshina means south. The sun is more in the south of the sky. In fact, in the winter, you see sometimes it's like very, very low. It just rises over here, and it never really gets too high. It just kind of keeps it's moving, but it's always towards the south. Like that, they're called Dakshināyanam. And that started in, what is that? July something, when the sun went into, I think it's the Cancer or the Capricorn. You have to make that calculation. And then it moves for 6 months in the south, and then it starts in January, right around that time, then it starts moving in, Uttarayanam, in the north. And so... And that time of the year is considered more auspicious. The Uttarayanam, that's when people try to have all their weddings and different things like that. So the sun is moving and people are observing these things. Text 7, translation. Shukadeva Goswami continued, "My dear king, as stated before, the learned say that the sun travels over all sides of Nakṣatrāṇām mountain in a cycle whose length is 95,100,000 yojanas. And that equals to what, 760,800,000 miles. On Nakṣatrāṇām mountain, due east of Mount Sumeru, is a place known as Devidhani, possessed by King Indra. Similarly, in the south is a place known as Samyamani, possessed by Yamaraj. In the west is a place known as Nimlochani, possessed by Varuna. And in the north is a place called Vibhavari, possessed by the moon god. Sunrise, midday, sunset, and midnight occur in all those places according to specific times, thus engaging all living entities in their various occupational duties and also making them cease such duties." Right? When the sun comes up, you've got all kinds of things to do. When the sun goes down, you're supposed to take rest. Right? Sometimes, no, not sometimes, every single day. When I'm at the temple in the morning, I chant my japa out in front, about a half hour, and just watch all these people. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. And they're coming home. You got people driving home, or maybe going to work, but mostly you can tell they're coming home. Or you got them walking up the sidewalk. Today it was 2 drunk guys on one of those scooters, and they came across the street there on Cass, took a right down Grand Avenue on the other side towards the traffic, and then took a right and hit the medium, and both went flying off their scooter into the middle of the street on the other side. And 2 girls, young ladies, also on their way home from the bar, came over and tried to help them, and one was hurt pretty bad. And they just wondered what was going on, whether they're going to call the ambulance or something. And then finally they called someone, a friend came and picked them up. So really you're supposed to be in bed at that time, right? You really are going to Mangalartik. But that's what it's saying here, the sun's movements engages all living entities, right? The sun comes up and nature, right? All the birds are tweeting and living entities wake up, and human beings are supposed to wake up, and when the sun sets, that's the time for taking some rest. So the movement of the sun is controlling that. And text 9, the living entities residing on Sumeru mountain are always very warm. It's interesting because the sun's right pretty close. As at midday, because for them the sun is always overhead. Although the sun moves counterclockwise, facing the constellations, with Sumeru mountain on its left, it also moves clockwise and appears to have the mountain on its right because it is influenced by the Dakshinayabharta wind. People living in countries at points diametrically opposite to where the sun is first seen rising will see the sun setting. And if a straight line were drawn from a point where the sun is at midday, the people in countries at the opposite end of the line would be experiencing midnight. Similarly, if people residing where the sun is setting were to go to countries diametrically opposite, they would not see the sun in the same condition. Right? On your phone, can you tell us what time it is in Mayapur right now?
Yeah.
Or maybe you just know off the top of your head. How many hours ahead are they? Right, so it's completely, that's what it's saying. On the other side of the world, the sun is perceived differently. Straight line, so that's the point is, the sun's there, but depending on where you are in the world or the universe, you're going to be experiencing it differently, like that. Translation, when the sun travels from Devadhani, the residence of Indra, to Samyamani, the residence of Yamaraj, it travels 23,775,000 yojanas in 15 gatikas, 6 hours. So in miles it says here, that's 190,200,000 miles in 6 hours. If you want to calculate that, you can, how fast that is. Purport, the distance indicated by the word sadikani is pancha vimsati sahasradikani, or 25,000 yojanas. That plus 2.5 crores and 12.5 lakshas of yojanas is the distance the sun travels between each 2 cities. This comes to 23,775 yojanas, or 190,200,000 miles. The total orbit of the sun is 4 times that distance, or 95,100,000 yojanas, 760 million miles, 760,800,000 miles. 11. From the residence of Yamaraj, the sun travels through Nimlochani, the residence of Runa, from there to Vibhavari, the residence of the moon god, and from there again to the residence of Indra. In a similar way, the moon, along with other stars and planets, become visible in the celestial sphere, and then sets and again becomes invisible. Purport, here we are. In Bhagavad-gītā 10 chapter 21st verse, Krishna says, nakṣatrāṇām ahaṁ śaśī, of the stars I am the moon. This indicates that the moon is similar to the other stars. In Vedic literature, the Vedic literature informs us that within this universe there is one sun, which is moving. The Western theory that all the luminaries in the sky are different suns is not confirmed in the Vedic literature. Nor can one assume that these luminaries are the suns of other universes, for each universe is covered by various layers of material elements. And therefore, although the universes are clustered together, we cannot see from one universe to another. In other words, whatever we see is within this one universe. In each universe there is one Lord Brahmā, and there are other demigods and other planets, but there's only one sun. Om Agyantimarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Minitam Dinataismai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Dena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Vanchikabhadrubhascha kripa sindhu bevacha patidanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So by your good wishes, I'll try to say a few things here. So this 5th canto, there's a few points that are very, very helpful. One is that it exposes our limitations. It exposes our limitations because what's described here is far, far, far beyond not only our perception, but even our imagination. Even our imagination. Krishna is possessed of unlimited potency, and he says that this whole material world is ekam sena stito jagat, just a spark of his splendor. That such amazing descriptions are here of vast distances, different kinds of abodes, with way, way beyond anything we've ever experienced or even in our imagination. So what to make of that? One thing is, if something is beyond our experience, we could say it never existed or doesn't exist. Now, why would you say something like that? I'll tell you an example. Prabhupada gives a story about a foolish little boy who grew up in a village. And he was kind of foolish. People didn't think he'd amount to much. And he grew up to become a high court judge. So, 2 people in the village are talking about it. Do you know that Kumar became a high court judge? No, he couldn't become a high court judge. He was such a foolish little boy. I don't believe he became a high court judge. No, he's become a high court judge. Well, if he is a high court judge, he's probably not getting a very good salary. So what does that indicate? Envy, right? That you grew up in the village with Kumar, he was a kind of a foolish boy, and you were his friends, and now you find out he's become a high court judge, and you still can't accept it. You say, well, at least he must be getting a good salary. I say, okay, it's not possible. I can't accept that, therefore I will just, what do they call that today? That you cancel. You cancel things. If you don't like something or someone or this or that, you just cancel it out of your reality. As if, you can do stuff like that. You just, it's not part of my reality anymore. So the Bhagavatam is explaining there that the reality, the total picture of reality is so much greater than ourselves that we should, the natural reaction should be one of humility, great humility, awe and reverence. Different emotions like that are most appropriate. If you see someone who does something much better than you, and just like the artwork here, you see good artists. I'm still at the level of stick figures. Anyone else still at the level of stick figures when it comes to just kind of like stick figures? Yeah. So how is it that these devotees here have painted and done all this? It's just that ability is mind-boggling. How they just sit there. Just like I was doing a wedding the other day. Brajamandal and Jean were there up in Malibu, and I've seen this woman come a few times. They hire her, and she has about the size of that Hare Krishna sign there, sideways, a blank canvas. And during the ceremony, she's painting the wedding live, and she's finishing it up. And by the time we were all packing up and getting ready to go, she was doing the final touches and all that. Very, very gifted. I've seen her a few times. As a gift for the bride and groom, I don't know how much she charges, but it's amazing. Just like in there, it was. You can say, why don't you just take a picture? But I mean, it's the point. It's a very beautiful oil painting of the ceremony. And just like she's just going through the ceremony, and then there you come around, look at it, and there's the bride and the groom. And fortunately, I'm not in there anywhere. Just usually the bride and the groom, a few other people. But what talent! You think, oh, wow, that's amazing. So Krishna's talent and potencies are unlimited, and this material world is just a little of it. If you think this is far out, how about the descriptions of the spiritual world? How about even the fact that maybe we're a spirit soul? That doesn't tally with our day-to-day reality. In fact, many people, they just poo-poo the idea, right? It's like, come on. All this talk about spirit, soul, it's ridiculous. There's no soul there. You're just a chemical reaction. I've been to school. I went to high school and college, and everyone in high school and college and graduate school and so on told me I'm just a chemical reaction, and all this other stuff is just completely unverifiable. Therefore, it's not true, because we cannot verify it with our tiny, tiny, insignificant senses, mind, and intelligence. So I guess you could say one of the first, what do they say about the mind? It's like a parachute. If it's not open, it doesn't work. Right? You've heard that one before? Mind's like a parachute. If it's not open, it doesn't work. So until someone opens up the possibility of these things, of actually more knowledge and wisdom, we can't go anywhere, right? Some people say, that's it. That's it. Some people, just like they talk about education. Okay, I did my 12 years, I did my 14, whatever. That's it for the rest of my life. I don't have to get educated anymore. But actually, the whole point of education is to teach you how to keep learning, keep expanding your horizons, as they say. So the Bhagavatam is just giving us a little hint of the super position of Krishna, super excellence, super powers, whatever you want to call them, unlimited. And the who's speaking here? You got Shukadeva Goswami is speaking, right? And in one of the verses I read in a few days earlier, it also said that this description is given by great sages and devatas, people on that level of existence. This is what they can see. That's another very important point of not only the fifth canto of the Bhagavatam, but all the Vedic literatures. It's multidimensional. I mean, the biggest split is the spirit and matter. There's all these conversations about spirit and matter, and you don't get that conversation in mundane literature, in education. You don't. It's not allowed. You will be, actually you can lose your job, you know that? If you're in a university, in a classroom, you're a professor, and you start talking about God and the soul and things like that, you can lose Your job. Now you can stand up there and talk about how there is no God, there's no soul. You can spew the history of atheism, you know, till you're sick to your stomach or something. I don't know what they call it, ad nauseum, right? That's what that means, doesn't it? Until you're sick. You can talk about the fact there's no God, it's all a bunch of bunk, this, that, and you know, that's fantastic. That's wonderful. Everyone applauds. But if you start talking about your faith and God and the soul, you can actually lose your position in the university. Did you know that? And many people have. They've been blacklisted from teaching. They've been blacklisted in the different scientific circles and so on, just because they mentioned or talked about the fact they have some faith in God and the soul and so on. Quite interesting. The times we live in. So unless one can open their eyes to the fact that there are so many dimensions of reality, and not that we have to accept on blind faith, but we can verify them if we want. If you want to take the time, you can verify all of this information, but it means a change of consciousness. You know, just like, I mean, there is this book. Has anyone seen this book before? If you like numbers, Sariputa's book came out many years ago, Vedic Cosmography and Astronomy, and he talks about many of the different things that are, actually addresses all of them and more in this book, and you know, the different views of Vedic knowledge, because the fact that it's multidimensional. The demigods, some of the descriptions of what the demigods can see. Now, what can you see if you live in more than 3 dimensions? How do you even answer that question, right? But we only live in 3 dimensions, and we can only perceive certain things, and our senses are. But how about those who are describing things, just like these different distances? He addresses that in here, because at the end of the book there's questions and answers, just real quick answers, and actually brings up the verse, the purport I just read from, about how we try to understand that what we're seeing out there, astronomers are seeing, is not into other universes. Where are these coverings? And he's making the point that many of these descriptions in the Vedic literatures aren't by human beings. They're not by human beings. It's how the demigods see them, and they live in a different dimension. I'll give you an example of different dimensions. I was thinking of it. I hope it's appropriate. But it's a different dimensions of time, because time is relative. Now, Prabhupada talks about the story of the cosmonaut. What's a cosmonaut? Do you know what a cosmonaut is? You weren't around during the Cold War, were you? What's a cosmonaut? Yes, a Russian cosmonaut. I should have asked you. I apologize. Right next to it, I should have asked you. Well, you would have known. It's a cosmonaut. They're going around. The Russians were the first one to send a human being, you know, around in a spaceship around the orbit of the Earth. And Prabhupada said he was always saying, "Where is my Moscow? Where is my Moscow?" In other words, very attached. But how long the Sputnik and how long did it take them to go around the Earth? Do you know?
1 hour.
They're going that fast. It's about 24 hours, right? Just a few hours, whatever it is. It's hours. It's measured in hours. Now, if you know, just like on your app, I know on my app, if on Google Maps, if you say, "Give me the directions to Los Angeles," it'll tell you the driving time. It'll tell you how long to take the train. It'll take you how long to walk, you know, or bicycle. You see that? And if it's long enough, like LA, it'll even tell you how long to fly. So all of a sudden, it's like flying is like 1.5 hour, a car is like 3 hours. This, and then walking is like, you got a day and a half, right? You got it. Now, one thing, it's just LA, but by the different dimensions of how your mode of transportation is, you can say, no, LA is only 2 hours away. So no, it's not. You know, it's 15 hours by bicycle, or it's like 2-3 days by walking. Now, who's right? They're all right, but it's because you're in a different dimension of transportation. So there's different dimensions of perception and reality, and that's what it's saying here also, that these distances that are described sometimes, and they vary, depending on the different, who's perceiving them. Just like there are Vedic books about astronomy written from the level of human beings. And there's Vedic astronomy references by the level of demigods. And also these different distances and where the earth is and the moon and this and that, and the distances between them and the sun. It's because you're hearing about it through someone else's eyes, and that person is talking in a different dimension, a completely different dimension. How is it the yogis, Prabhupada even refers to this, different yogis can bathe in different rivers simultaneously? You know that? So you go bathe in the Ganges, but there are yogis who can bathe in the Ganges, the Jamuna, the Narmada, simultaneously, practically simultaneously. How can they do that? Because they know how to travel on a certain dimension where they can do that every morning, get a bath. You can't even understand that. And those are yogis. So the point is there's all these different dimensions, and to deny that such dimensions exist, we have to ask, why are you denying it? Is it you have undisputable proof that such dimensions don't exist, and how do you get such proof? Or is it you can't accommodate it? And why can't we accommodate it? If you think, I was thinking about that, it's because of the control factor. If so much is going on out there that we have no perception of and ability to control, either by our knowing what it is, right? It's fearful. And it's actually quite fearful. We don't know what's out there. And it's interesting, even in modern science, what they call it dark matter. Dark matter? How much is the universe dark matter?
96.
Huh?
96.
All right, so that means 96% of what's out there, we don't even know what it is. Now, if you have 100 questions on a test, and you get 96, you get 4 right, and 96 you can't even answer, how well did you know the subject? Not very good. You're going to go back to day 1, right? So 96, they say it, 96% of what's out there, we don't even really know what it is. And the 4% they're talking about, they don't even really know that very well either. And Prabhupada says in one purport that we don't even know what's really going on this one planet. And we're supposed to listen to everything they're saying about what's going on thousands and millions of miles away, So, it's getting late. One thing is in this book, it's a very good book to look at, because one of the things Satiputta brings up is that the scientists really don't know what's going on. And amongst themselves, there's so much controversy about how they measure distances. It's called the Doppler effect, redshift and blue, all these different, and they disagree amongst themselves, and they're not even sure. If you think about it, to measure something thousands and millions of miles away, light years away, and say with absolute certainty that's exactly what's going on, and some scientists say, how can you even think that? Light is traveling millions and millions of miles, and what's in between, and they also bring up the point is, how are we sure the laws of physics that we have here in this dimension are the same as the law of physics somewhere else, and the same laws are applicable at a further distance, or let alone in different dimensions. So we should be a little humble. We should be very humble, actually. And that's what's, it's not just Shukadeva Goswami's thrown this out to make us humble. It's a description of the universe, how amazing Krishna's creative ability is, and this is just a spark of his splendor. This is through Lord Brahmā, one of his devotees is empowered, he's doing all these amazing things. But it's a very, very awe-inspiring description of just a little spark of Krishna's potency, and that's Krishna, our dear most friend, right? And this is just the material world. Imagine what the spiritual world is like. You don't have to imagine, the description is there. But that dimension is our actual dimension. That's the dimension of the soul in Krishna and devotional service. But when you're talking to someone, you can bring up this different thing about different dimensions. Just like an adult and a child are in 2 different dimensions, they're looking at the same thing. I always give the example. Kids when they eat, right? Little kids when they eat, it's a whole thing. They're not even, it's like you wonder, what are they thinking about? They take the thing, put it on their head, throw it across the room. Now, can you imagine at breakfast, Mukunda was eating like that? like that, or Govardhan, just like that, throwing across patio and banging his hand, I want more, and like that. You think you're acting like a kid. You have, but when you grow up, you understand eating it's a different thing, right? Or like teachers and students, you got a professor whose vast information is there, and you got the kids are there, and they don't know anything. And he's trying to bring them up to seeing reality through the level of higher education, right? Yeah, just like an Ayurvedic doctor just looks at you, maybe takes your hand, just feels the pulse, how's that? And then can tell you all kinds of things. I was just listening to Bhakti Vijayapurna Maharaj, who was saying that real good Ayurvedic doctors, like I think they do like 8 or so depths of pulse now. Used to be like 64. 64, you could actually be so perceptive, 64 different pulses you would feel. And based upon that, you could say a lot about person's health. Now, is that harmonium there? Let's wait to Chandra Prabhu. In Calcutta, many years ago, he went, saw an Ayurvedic doctor. I don't know which one of the ones are very well recommended. And that Ayurvedic doctor took his pulse and told him which disc in his back was bad. And had it right on. Just from the pulse, he told him which spinal disc was, had a problem with. And he was right. So, there's different levels of perception, and it's a matter of education and bringing someone up, being taught how to perceive things. So, Vedic literatures are in Vedic, yoga, meditation, our daily spiritual practices are supposed to bring us up to that level of perceiving higher and higher levels of reality. Just the reality of the mode of goodness. That's an example right there. There's different levels of perception. Someone in ignorance, what do they see? Someone in passion, what do they see? Someone in goodness, what do they see? Right? Looking at the same thing, completely different. It's because of the dimension you're existing in. Sattva gun, Rajagun, and Tamagun. And Krishna in many places in the Gita explains that, the perception in the different modes of nature. What is someone in the mode of goodness? Their determination, their work, their this, their that. It's completely just like diet. Someone in the mode of ignorance or passion cannot appreciate being a vegetarian. They just don't see a reason for it. They just can't see. Doesn't make any sense to them all. Now, does that mean everyone's right? No, because there's different perceptions which are more in tune with reality. But these are different things to contemplate. And one thing very good about this book, you can read it if you like, but it's explaining how, so many, it's not that everything disagrees with our modern astronomy and physics and so on. Quite a lot of these numbers are very, 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 very close. And I'll end with a little story, a little video clip someone sent me, and I just watched the last 5 minutes of it the other day. For some reason I was going through, what is that? And I clicked on it. Some yogi, well-spoken English yogi, long hair and all that. He's speaking about the amazing contributions of India to the modern world. And there's a little section, he's talking about astronomy. And according to Vedic astronomy, I don't know what the name is in Latin or whatever, that the biggest star in the sky is called Jyeshtha. Now it's millions and millions of miles away. And he's pointing out how in the world did these people, the Vedic, hundreds, thousands of years ago, know that star is so big, if it was in this solar system, it would, the sun's there, it would go all the way out to about the orbit of Jupiter. But they knew, the calculations in there, they knew that it's the biggest star, and it is the biggest star. Modern astronomy says that's the biggest star. How do they know? Or the closest star to us is called, was it Proxima Centaurus, I think. Does that mean Proxima? Means close or something? And in Sanskrit it's called Mitra, which means friend, someone who's close to you. And they knew that was the closest one. And another example is given that There's a constellation up there called Arundhati. Actually, it's like Vasishta Arundhati. In weddings in the south, the bride and groom, before they leave the mandap, they say some prayers to that constellation. And it's interesting what that constellation is actually two stars, Vasishta and his wife Arundhati. They're not just two stars next to each other, they're two stars that simultaneously revolve around each other. Not one's in the middle, one goes around it, but they actually revolve around each other. You can't even see them, barely with a telescope. But they knew that, and that's what it's Vasishta and Arundhati, and that's husband and wife, and that's a perfect relationship. Not that one's in, just like perfectly, it's harmony, they're going around each other. How do they know that? He made a mistake at the end of this video. He's saying, how do they know all this? And then he talked about speed of light. He quoted the Sanskrit, and there's some verse saying about the sun moving so many yojanas in a mita, which is like an amisha, like 1/11 of a second. And if you do all the math, it's what we say today is the speed of light. And that was written in Sanskrit thousands and thousands of years ago. And they did some other calculations. There's a verse about Govinda and Balaram and the cows. And somehow he talked about you do this and that, and you move a few things over. It's a calculation of pi times something, some perfectly modern, anyways. But at the end he goes, how do they all know all this? It's because they meditated. Well, they know it because it's coming down. It's descending knowledge from Krishna and the Vedic literatures and persons far, far beyond us. It wasn't just they meditated and boop, it all came to them. No, we didn't accept that. So even there's a little flaw in his understanding of knowledge and where it comes from. But you read these different things, these calculations. How do they know all this stuff? Because they're living on in a different dimension. So we should be excited about entering the dimension of Krishna consciousness. That's the best, that's the ultimate dimension. That's the dimension of Krishna Prem, Krishna consciousness. That's what we're looking for. We're trying to get out of this dimension and to that dimension. And that's done by Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we can end here. Any questions or comments?
Who said that again? That it came from their meditation?
Well, this video clip I had. A yogi. I can look it up for you. I might even send it to you. But it's you always see these different either writing or video clips about all these contributions of Vedic culture to modern science and medicine, and there's like, well, how do they know all this stuff? Or astronomical calculations. How do they know all these things? There's no instruments, and they're making calculations of things that are you can't even see with the naked eye. It's one thing that astronomy. There's cultures, ancient cultures all over the world. The movements of the planets. Like the picture here is actually that's in Jaipur. You can go to Jaipur and places in India. They have these different astronomy universities, and they have all these things built in. At this angle, it's where the sun is at the equinox, and different things. You go down to South America, they had that too. Or Egypt. You've been to the pyramids, right? Yeah. Maharaj said when he went on a trip with you there, he said the camel milk yogurt tastes like Vaseline. That's what Bhadranath Maharaj said. Huh? Confirmed. It's like Vaseline. So if you do go to Egypt for some reason, stay away from the camel milk yogurt. It's like Vaseline. But the pyramids, where they're situated, it's all astronomical calculations, and you can tell the sunrises and different things going on. So they could perceive these things, but how about things that are beyond the eye? And they knew about them. So it's a great mystery like that. So, you just got to meditate more on it. Okay, like that. Yeah, if your conclusion of your meditation is Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Nadiradir Govinda Savakarana Karanam, then your meditation is perfect. Any other questions from elsewhere?
Yes, from Zoom.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. What's the question?
But Vaikuntha Prabhu can go first.
Okay. He's in the Zoom dimension. See, there's different dimensions. He's in the Zoom dimension.
I was just appreciating your, explanation of the different dimensions. Like when His Holiness Bhadranayana Maharaj gave class on Sunday, he had done some. I guess there's some new telescope, $10 billion. I forget the name, but and they're sending back, photos. Of course, they're also doctoring the photos and coloring so many things. But anyway, the distances that they're putting on them, are just like so fantastical. These numbers, and it wouldn't fit within a 4 billion mile, universe, right. And we know all the coverings are there and that. So, but then the whole multidimensional. That's all. It's also very, very interesting. Thank you for sharing that perspective.
Prabhu. I look at the speaker, but actually you're right there. Hare Krishna.
It's my turn now?
It's always your turn.
Oh, thank you very much, Dharmasetu Prabhu. You're very kind. Dandavat pranams. Prabhu, there's a quote in Bhagavad-gītā as it is, who goes as follows, quote, "He who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection, nor happiness, nor the supreme destination," end quote. So based on this quote, my question is it that the scientists who do not take in consideration the Vedic perspective related to the explaining of the universe are risking to become animals in their next lives?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Well, as far as becoming an animal in your next life, you have to be kind of animalistic, right? So I wouldn't say right off the bat, just because someone has a wrong understanding of philosophy or theology or physics, the guy may be a vegetarian, this and that and so on, but so to just say automatically anyone who has a different view of reality will become an animal, they have to be animalistic. They're definitely not getting Krishna's mercy, and they won't be able to understand spiritual life if you're just stubbornly holding on to a mechanistic, mundane, three-dimensional explanation of reality. And we're really cheating ourselves. We're really cheating ourselves. In other words, there's so much more, and we just deny it exists. We just say it's just not there. It's very sad. Just like I have one brother, he never travels. Doesn't like to travel. He lives in Savannah, Georgia. He just won't travel. Go fishing. I'm going to go fishing. That's about it. Go fishing. Like that. He doesn't, to get him to even, drive to New England, visit my mom, or heaven forbid, go on a plane. He just doesn't, that's just his life. Savannah, Georgia. And that's it. And there's a whole world out there, but he's just not interested. And it says that in the mode of ignorance, one thinks that their work is their all in all, just their day, and they're just, and that's it, nothing else. As far as expanding your consciousness, let alone the material world, how about the whole spiritual reality? We're denying a God-given ability and our nature. Ananda Buddhi Vardhanam. What does Vardhanam mean? Vardhanam? Vardhanam. Increasing. It increases. That's the nature of the soul. The happiness increases, the knowledge increases, the devotion increases. Just like Prabhupada said, we know there's verses there about the gopis and Krishna have an ongoing competition. Krishna gets more beautiful, and the gopis are happy seeing Krishna more beautiful, so they become more beautiful. And Krishna sees how happy and beautiful the gopis are, he becomes more beautiful, and it just keeps going. It just gets better and better and better. Vardhanam means always increasing. So that's spiritual consciousness, whereas mundane consciousness just starts very, very restrictive, because the soul identifies with matter, and matter is dull and limited. That's why we're all like youthful life, because there's some energy when you're young, but when you get older, right? kind of like goes away. You know, it's like you're stuck with this body that's no longer youthful, and the brain doesn't work as good as it used. You know, so we're bewildered in youth because there's so much energy and excitement and expansion, but boy, when that goes away, it's like whoo. It's like, but you know, we identify with matter. It's just a sad story. We have the soul identifying with matter. So, well, I'm going on and on and on. I hope that answered your question, and I just kept talking. Forgive me. We can end here.
Oh no, Prabhu, no. As to be expected, very helpful, outstanding answer to my question. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.